And Dr. Bates and Chuck are both on assignment on this Friday. I'm Ron Allen. Our guest is Bill Salus, author, radio talk show host, and biblical scholar. Mr. Salus, new book, Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon. It's a fiction novel, but a compelling analysis of historic and present global circumstances based on biblical prophecy. Mr. Salus, thank you for joining us on News and Views. We appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be on the show with you today, Ron.
We have about 5 minutes with Mr. Salus, then he's coming back to spend the next half hour with us, but he's got so much to say. I would like to probably keep him the whole afternoon, but I know he has a schedule. I looked at a couple of your interviews that you had done. I believe it was on Jewish Voice, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of the interviews, and your information is absolutely astonishing. And let me tell some of our people down the line, we have 127 cities that take this radio program, and some of our stations, a lot of our stations are not Christian stations, they're secular. But let me tell you, friends, if you're a secular listener and you think, oh, well, you're going to start talking Christian stuff, I need you to listen to this, because what Mr. Salus is talking about affects you as well as it does the Christians. And though some of the Bible references might be strange to you, perhaps it'll inspire you to go look them up and find out what he's talking about. Let me set the stage very quickly, Mr. Salus. Our world has been pushed into chaos, uncertainty, fear. We're looking at Iran's nuclear threat, the Arab Spring, the collapse of despots for life, governing vacuum left in the wake. What do you think is the short-term end result of all this chaos the world is facing right now?
Well, I do believe the Bible talks about a lot of the things that are going on presently. The Arab Spring, the liberal pundits were hoping that it was just simply an Arab awakening driven by the youth blows with the social networks of YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, to catch a glimpse outside of the state-censored media and confines of 7th century Islam. And they had hoped that there'd be democracy spreading out throughout, Western-style democracy spreading out throughout the Middle East. But the problem with that, we're already seeing that in Egypt is the prime example, that the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafist al-Noor party, strictly Islamic parties, have now gained 71% of the parliament, and they are pushing towards ruling that country in a format of Islamic Sharia law, where you have no separation of church or state, and it is basically not a Western-style democracy. There'll be no women's rights, so to speak, etc. So what we're really seeing there is the opposite of what was hoped for from the liberal pundit's perspective. And what I point out is that we have in the Bible, in Daniel 2:21, it says, "It's the Lord who changes times and seasons, raises and removes kings, gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those with understanding." And Ron, what we've been seeing over there is clearly a season of change. Is clearly a removal of kings. Remember, back in Daniel's days, they didn't go by presidents and prime ministers. Mm-hmm. We've seen Tunisia's president, who reigned over there for 23 years, Ben Ali. We saw Mubarak, who reigned over there for 30 years. Both those guys were deposed. We saw Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, who'd reigned over there for over 40 years, I believe it was 42 years, who took a bullet to the head. We saw Abdullah Saleh of Yemen, who'd reigned over there for 33 years. He has stepped down. We also had bin Laden, who was an Arab terrorist leader, and Anwar al-Awlaki, bin Laden in May and Anwar al-Awlaki in October. These guys have stepped down or been assassinated, etc. And so we are clearly seeing a removal of kings, and therefore there will be a raising up of kings. And this is what Daniel said the Lord does. And so what my concern is that, well, what's the face of the new Middle East going to look like? And we don't have to go too far outside of Bible prophecies to find that out, because every one of those countries that were involved in the Arab Spring, in North Africa and the Middle East, are involved in end times Bible prophecies. Now, there's a Psalm 83 final Arab-Israeli war described. There's a Russian-Iranian-led invasion with Turkey and Libya and other populations in Ezekiel 38 and 39. So we have, if we are deep into the end times, and many of us believe we are, we have Bible prophecies that talk about each one of those populations that have been affected by the Arab Spring that come against Israel for varying reasons, two different major prophecies in the end times. So when Piers Morgan interviewed Dan Rather...
Before you get into that, Mr. Salus, let me hold you. We're going to a break real quick here. And friends, I just wanted to whet your appetite for this. Mr. Salus has so much more to talk about. And we're going to ask the question and find out from him, could this be the final generation? We'll know in a few minutes. At least we'll get his opinion on it.
Stay right here. There's more News and Views with Dr. Larry Bates, Chuck Bates, and you, right here on the Information Radio Network. Now, here are more News and Views with Dr. Larry Bates and Chuck Bates.
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Allen. Dr. Bates and Chuck are both on assignment. Our guest is Bill Salus. He's an author, radio talk show host, biblical scholar, and a prophet. And we'll get into that in a few moments. But, Mr. Salus, I'm sorry, I cut you off as we're going to our break. Would you please follow up on the significance of the things covered in Psalm 83 that you are referencing?
Well, what I was summarizing was trying to have the predicted outcome and concluding with your initial question to me before the break. And that I'd mentioned that Piers Morgan on CNN had interviewed the retired news broadcaster Dan Rather, and he asked him in wake of what had happened to Muammar Gaddafi last October, what would be the new face of Libya? What would the new regime change look like? And Dan Rather's comment was, he who lives by the crystal ball walks on a lot of broken glass. And so what I tell people, Christians in particular, is that we don't live by a crystal ball, we live by the Bible, which about a third of it does talk about Bible prophecies. And within that third, almost 9,000 to 10,000 passages, many of those passages find application as what is called the last days. And you had mentioned before the break, do I believe we're living in the final generation? Would you like me to respond to that?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Psalm 83. Okay. Well, the final generation is a topic that permeates the Bible, especially in prophecy. And we have numerous places, even Jesus Christ himself spoke about it in Matthew 24, verse 32, about a final generation. Daniel, in verse 12, spoke about prophecies that he had to seal up until the time of the end. Ezekiel, the prophet, in Ezekiel 38:8, talks about a latter years. I mean, the theme of an end times is very integral inside of the Bible, and the key is, with most of these passages, the super sign about the last days, a generation that shall not pass, Jesus Christ says, is when you see, he called it a parable of the fig tree, and he says in verse 32, you learn this parable of the fig tree when its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you shall know that the summer is near. So also when you see all of these things, know that it is near at the door. Surely I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away until all these things take place. And he seals that by saying, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. And most of us teach, Ron, that is alluding to Israel through the typologies in the Old Testament of the fig tree. And so it's the super sign. It's the elephant in the room. It became a nation in 1948. They just celebrated their 64th birthday as a country. And they have never faced such an existential threat in all of their history as they do presently, with Iran's nuclear program and Syria's crazy revolution over there. Syria's President Bashar Assad has threatened already at the end of last year, if things get bad over there, he would send missiles into Tel Aviv in 6 hours. He would have Hezbollah send in missiles in 3 of those 6 hours, and he'd have Iran in the latter 3 hours block off the Persian Gulf from Western warship intervention. So we have a very interesting sequence of events that are stage-setting right now, and I do believe the Bible has spoken quite a bit in depth about these.
Now, people will look at the situation in the Middle East and feel like if they're a little on the negative side, will think for a moment that there is a conspiracy that has been going on for a long time, and these nations are all getting together and will move one of these days as one body against what we refer to as the Christian world. But my own personal impression of it is these leaders of these countries, and most of these countries are now without real leaders. A strong man may arise in Iran, Syria, Egypt, Libya, Jordan, wherever they have in Turkey. But if they can't agree on between themselves or among themselves on the most moderate questions of boundaries and priorities, how in the world can they get together as one body and move against the rest of the world?
Well, it's interesting. Most people, when they think about the Middle East conflict and they look at it through time immemorial, back through the ancient ages, they think, well, it's always been an Arab-Israeli conflict, Arabs fighting Jews. But, the reality of the thing is that the Arabs have fought against the Arabs more than the Arabs have fought against the Jews for a time. But suffice it to say, even amidst all of their animosities towards each other, and power grabs and things like that. Because you have splits in Islam between Sunni and Shiite Islam and whatnot. But the underlying thing that unites the Arabs is a common hatred of Israel. And in Psalm 83, it talks about a confederacy of 10 populations, which, if this prophecy has not found fulfillment yet, and I don't believe it has, I write about this in great length in Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon, my brand new book. It deals with Lebanon and, of course, Hezbollah inside of Lebanon. It deals with Syria. It deals with Jordan. It deals with the Palestinians. It deals with the Hamas, the Egyptians, and the Saudis. These populations today were written about 3,000 years ago, coming together in Psalm 83 to form a confederacy, a contemporary confederacy of countries that form a crafty council, the psalmist says, Asaph. He was a prophet for his time. Then they want to come together to cut the nation off, that the name Israel will be remembered no more. And then he goes on to list who they are, and I just mentioned that to you. And their goal, ultimately, in Psalm 83, verse 12, is to take the pastures of God for themselves. So here's how this would play out today if this prophecy is imminent, and I actually do believe it is, Ron, is that they don't want peace with the Jews. They don't want a two-state solution. They want peace without the Jews in the Middle East. They want one more Arab state, and they want to call it Palestine. You know, you talk about the Arabs coming together in unity. Well, the first time ever that they've attempted pan-Arabism, it's formed in 1945 with the Arab League. 22 Arab states come together in 1945, before there was even an Israel, before there was a Palestinian refugee crisis, and their goal was to unite the Arab states and deal with their boundaries, and they'd all received their statehood after World War I when the Ottoman Empire was collapsed. But now, a major focus of the Arab League presently is dealing with this mess in the Arab Spring and dealing with this the Palestinian refugee crisis and the plight of the Palestinians. And even the Arab League is proving itself to be extremely ineffective, because if you look at what's going on in Syria now, they can't even get that violence over there, that revolution, that civil war to stop. Mm-hmm. And they're relying on the United Nations and Kofi Annan's new plan to try to stop that. And I just frankly don't think it's going to work, because Bashar Assad is not interested in being just another one of these deposed dictators and a casualty of the Arab Spring. And he was 16 years old when he saw his father, Hafez Assad, in 1982, just kill about 10,000 to 20,000 of his countrymen in the fourth largest city at that time, which was Hama. So presently in Homs, the third largest city, about the size of San Francisco, you have had almost 8,000 to 9,000 Syrians killed, much in the same fashion that happened in 1982. And one of the real interesting facts that most people are not bringing forward is that earlier in 2011, when the Arab Spring was starting to move into and the revolution was starting to happen into Syria, many of the Scud-D missiles and other missiles that Bashar Assad possessed were moved up into Homs for safekeeping. The rebels know those missiles are up there, and many of those have made their way into Hezbollah's hands, because that's very close to the border of Lebanon. So now we have Hezbollah and Syria possessing Scud-Ds, which can carry chemical payloads, and they can be shot over 400 yards. They can be shot from the northernmost parts of Syria into the southernmost parts of Israel with a 20-yard accuracy. So they can hit any target they want, and they can carry chemicals. And Israel practices every year a civilian and military cooperative defense drill called Turning Point to protect against chemical and electronic attacks from multi-front sources, meaning Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, and Hamas. And they've given out most of their citizens gas masks. So
now you mentioned electronic. You're talking about a pulse bomb?
That's a possibility. That's definitely a possibility over there. They're concerned about electromagnetic pulse or other types of events that could happen, military strategies that could happen to diffuse their electronic capabilities. For instance, when Israel went into Syria in 2007 to attack their nuclear site, they were able to take down a lot of the radar defense mechanisms and things inside of Syria. So those technologies exist, but certainly a EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, with a burst altitude of 180 miles up in the air, shot up over Israel, could send Israel's electronics back, and do irreparable damage. And we know that Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, has practiced over the Caspian Sea on numerous occasions, bursting off such a missile 180 miles over the Caspian Sea. So these are the types of real threats that are going on in the Middle East. And the problem for us in America, what should we be watching for? Well, we're concerned about that where about a third to a fourth of the world's oil are coming through those waterways over there, Strait of Hormuz, Gulf of Aden, the Suez Canal, especially the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has threatened to shut that strait down if anyone preempts a strike on their nuclear site. Did you know that when President Barack Obama became president in January of 2009, the average price of gas was $1.89. This was
yes.
forward at Fox News.
I remember
Presently,
that.
The average gas is about $3.89.
I remember when I was a kid, gas was 15 cents a gallon. Then when I started driving, it was 19 cents a gallon. So, yes, I remember all of those landmarks. Mr. Salus, can you hang on with us a few more minutes? We're going to another break real quick, then we'll come back. We have about 10 minutes at the end of the half hour. Can you stay with us?
I can, absolutely.
I'd appreciate it. I want you to finish talking about the future of the U.S., Canada, England, and France, etc., and the 10-Nation Confederation. Back in a couple of moments with Bill Salus, biblical scholar and author.
Stay right here. There's more News and Views with Dr. Larry Bates, Chuck Bates, and you, right here on the Information Radio Network. Now, here are more News and Views with Dr. Larry Bates and Chuck Bates.
And welcome back to News and Views. I'm Ron Allen. Dr. Bates and Chuck are on assignment. Our guest is Bill Salus, radio talk show host, author of Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon. Mr. Salus is also a biblical scholar. Mr. Salus, if you would, tell us where your book is available. I would assume Amazon and the usual places, but give us a website or something where we can get information.
You're right, absolutely. It's at Amazon.com. You can also pick it up at like Barnes & Noble and Calvary Chapel bookstores and other places, but they can come to my website as well, and that is prophecydepot.com. Prophecy Depot, like HomeDepot.com, and we've got the book available there as well as do we have a lot of articles that I've written about all the prophetic subjects you and I have talked about, and we have active news headlines going on, etc. So it's an active site for them. ProphecyDepot.com. Thank you for that, Ron.
Friends, this is the type of book that you want to give a young man or woman, perhaps just out of high school, going into college, or in high school, as a gift for birthday or some holiday. Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon. It's a fictional novel, but a compelling analysis of historic and present global circumstance. They want a history lesson. They want a reference book, and still an excellent read. It's Revelation Hope, Hope Beyond, a Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon. What a great gift it would make. Let me go back for a moment, something you said a little while ago, Mr. Salus, and that was that you didn't think that the current confederation of the signatories to the Euro financial system would be the confederation the Bible speaks of. Where is it going to rise from if it's not out there growing now?
Well, I want to make a distinction between the 10 populations listed in Psalm 83, verses 6 through 8, and the other places where the 10 kings or 10 kingdoms show up in Daniel 7, verses 23 and 24, Revelation 13:1, and Revelation 17. They show up also in different places. The 10 populations I was referring to are Arab populations. They're not populations that come out of the revived Roman Empire in the end times prophecies, when the Antichrist comes together with his 10-division state. Daniel 7:23 talks about a one-world government, and we believe that is just about to happen. And if the Middle East goes apocalyptic, that would be the final catalyst that would probably trigger that. But then it talks about in Daniel 7:23, and then the verse following, verse 24, that one world order then does a 10-division split. And we know from a prophecy in Daniel 2, verses 31 through 45, when Nebuchadnezzar had this bizarre dream, the king of the Babylonians, back around 586 BC, that there would be 4 empires, Gentile empires, the Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Greek, and the Roman Empire. And this image did this division split, so it had 2 legs showing, and it turns out that's the east-west split of the Roman Empire. And other prophecies tell us that would be revived. And that we're seeing fulfilled today in the European Union, the revival of the Roman Empire. And we're told in Daniel 9:26 and 9:27 that there will actually be a world leader, an Antichrist, the Bible calls him, that come out of this revived Roman Empire. It says that he will come out of this people who destroyed the city of Jerusalem and the sanctuary, the Jewish temple. That was the Roman Empire in 70 AD. So you're going to see a 10-division split coming forward in the end of end times, but before that you're going to see a global order, and you're going to see a global religion too, as per Revelation 17. So I just wanted to clarify that I'm not talking about the same 10 populations in Psalm 83 that we are in Daniel 7 and elsewhere.
All right, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Let's take something. As I say, we do have a lot of secular listeners on this program, and they're probably asking, all right, we're talking about the Middle East, we're talking about Europe, we're talking about the rest of the world. What happens if we are at least approaching the final generation? What happens to the U.S., Canada, England, etc.? All of the big eight, let's say. Let's stick on this side of the pond, U.S. and Canada, Mexico. What happens in end times?
Well, you bring up a very interesting point, because the Bible is very specific about many populations. It talks about Israel over 2,300 times. It talks about even the Gaza through Philistia and whatnot, ancient Philistia. I think that's like over 40 times. Egypt, it's all over the place. Even in the end times, it talks about Russia, and we believe even China as the kings of the East. But what about America, the greatest superpower that has ever lived? Where do we show up? And it's interesting. I've interviewed on my radio show authors who have been burdened by this topic. Mark Hitchcock wrote the book, The Late Great United States. Terry James wrote the book, The American Apocalypse. And Dr. David Reagan revised his America the Beautiful. And they all ask the same question. Where is America? What's its future? And where is America in the Bible? And I've got some good news and I've got some bad news, Ron. The good news is they all believe that they all came up with the same consensus. The bad news is that consensus isn't that good for America. If America can be found in the Bible, and I'll tell you where I think it is, and there's about 6 different arguments as to where America could be, but in any one of those cases, it's not the same America of the superpower status that we have right now. In fact, Mark Hitchcock doesn't even think that we are in the Bible. So what happens to us?
Well, before you go on, let me ask you where you think it is found.
I believe it's found in Ezekiel 38, verses 13, where it talks about Ezekiel 38 talks about a confederacy of 9 populations that come to invade Israel, that's dwelling in the latter years in the midst of the land, without walls, bars, nor gates, dwelling securely in a very wealthy Israel, because they're coming for plunder and great booty. But there's these protesters on the sidelines, Sheba, Dedan, the merchants of Tarshish, and their young lions, that seem to be protesting Russia's coalition efforts. And Sheba would be Yemen, Dedan would be Saudi Arabia. The merchants of Tarshish would probably be Britain, which is a name that they used to go by. We believe back a long time ago to Tarshish, and America would be their young lions. Of course, the British Empire used to be the sun would never set on it up until 1920. Now the sun sets on it every day. But once upon a time, they had young lions. They had Canada. They had America. They had Australia. They were all over. They were in North Africa and India, etc., even in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. But because of things they did, in my estimation, not honoring the ability of Lord Balfour to give Israel all that land he was supposed to give in the Balfour document in 1917, the sun is always setting on the British Empire now. In 70 years, that whole empire has collapsed. But the point is, America appears to be involved as the young lions. And what are they doing? They're protesting. It's much like, to me, when I heard Hillary Clinton recently say to Russia and China for vetoing the sanctions that were trying to be implemented against Syria. She said, that's despicable, Russia and China. That's despicable. Well, Hillary, what are you going to do about it? You know, there's a bloodbath going on over there in Syria, and they're threatening to attack Israel if things get out of hand. So I think we're already starting to see America waver. You know, the best-selling Christian book right now in the country is The Harbinger by Jonathan Cahn, and it is entirely a warning book about judgment to this country. He's referring to what happened to the northern kingdom of Israel in Isaiah 9:10. WorldNet Daily believes it's so much they've actually done a documentary out of it, out of Joseph Farah, the founder of WorldNet Daily's own pocketbook.
Yes, I have the book and I have the DVDs, and they are remarkable. I will honestly say that I find a little bit I don't find any question with the material that Rabbi Kahn puts out, but I find a little bit of question on some of his reasoning. But I guess that's probably just a difference of approach toward prophecy. Speaking of that, Mr. Salus, I hate to impose on you, but there are some things I haven't even started to ask you about, and I wonder, is there a chance of you staying through the newscast, or at least let us call you back in a few minutes to come back on, and we can talk a bit about prophecy?
Yeah, I'll stay on. I will say this, though. Regardless of how people feel about Jonathan's book, the point is it's a bestseller, and it is about...
Oh, absolutely. And it is a remarkable book.
That's the message. It's important. Yeah, I'll stick on.
All right. Thank you so much. Bill Salus is our guest. Back after the news, friends. Don't go away.
stay right here. There's more News and Views with Dr. Larry Bates, Chuck Bates, and you, right here on the Information Radio Network. Now, here are more News and Views with Dr. Larry Bates and Chuck Bates.
I'm Ron Allen. Dr. Bates and Chuck are on assignment this Friday. Bill Salus is our guest. He is an author, radio talk show host, biblical scholar. Go back to the author part. He has written a book called Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon, an outstanding book that you need to get into the hands of people that you care about, because there's an awful lot of prophecy. It's a biblical analysis of historic and present global circumstances, all based on biblical prophecy. Let me for a moment, Mr. Salus, ask you about that. You operate in the gift of prophecy. When did you discover that?
Well, I became a Christian in 1991 through a Bible study conducted by Chuck Missler on the book of Revelation. So the Lord gathers people into his kingdom through miscellaneous means, and for me it was Bible prophecy. For some people it's maybe a woman giving birth, it's the creation of a child, whatever it is, the Lord courts us in his different ways. But Bible prophecy is a witnessing tool. It is about a third of the Bible. And we're told in Isaiah 46, verses 9 and 10, that the Lord is the only one who can know the end from the beginning and tell us things that have not yet come. And this is how one of the ways he authenticates his sovereignty. So Bible prophecies are important because what it is it's not information from a God with too much time on his hands. It's information from a God who holds all time in his hands. And it's not given to impress us, but to inform us. It's given, the Lord knows what's going to come. And for us that he loves dearly, he loves us so much, he sent his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sins, that none would perish, but all who would receive him would have everlasting life. That's in John 3:16, and that is the good news gospel. There's information he knows that will affect our lives adversely in the end times, and he wants us to know about it so that we can steward our lives appropriately and we can tell people about it so they can also know our awesome God. So I do believe Bible prophecy is one of the most important elements of information we should possess in these last days.
I've heard the distinction between forthtelling and foretelling, as in fortune telling, and people that are not within the body of Christ would not understand the difference. Can you draw a line of difference between what the world will look at as fortune telling and what we look at as forthtelling?
Yes, and you made a point earlier in the hour, you mentioned that I'm a prophet. Well, technically I don't really call myself a prophet, just to clarify that. I consider myself a teacher of Bible prophecy, someone that has discerned prophecies that were given through the prophets centuries ago that were to be discovered and explored in our time frame. But, the prophecy, like God says in Isaiah 46 that I quoted to you, it's something that he declares only he can do. So anybody that has attempted to, like a Nostradamus or a Jeannie Dixon, that attempts to do prophecy, or the Mayan calendar, where people say the end of the world is going to be December 21st, 2012, those are clearly extra biblical prophecies, and they're not prophecies issued in the Bible from God through the modus operandi that he used, which was the Hebrew prophets and the apostles and Jesus. And so those are the prophecies that I pay attention to. Now, when a prophecy was given, it was given to a prophet, and he would be given near prophecies and far prophecies. Near prophecies were prophecies that would happen in their lifetime. And when they happened exactly as the prophet foretold, then the other prophecies said that obviously would reach out into the future should also be looked at with full credibility. That's the essence of Bible prophecy. So this is what we've got going here. We have a bunch of these prophecies that were not fulfilled during the lifetimes of the prophets, and that are about to find fulfillment in our future, in our lifetime. They are near prophecies to us now. They were far prophecies to them back then. Now, someone who issued a prophecy in ancient times that was a false prophecy, they did so on the pain of death. They were to be stoned. So, basically it's a very sensitive issue when it comes to Bible prophecy. God holds his shingle on the fact that he's the only one that can accurately, with 100%, declare the end from the beginning. And we're told in Revelation 19:10 that the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. And the two words that precede that passage is worship God, for the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is brings me back to my point. This is how I came to know the Lord. Because a God who loves us and wants us to know the future, our natural response to that should be to worship Him for caring.
Well, you mentioned that they used to stone the prophets. The proof text of a prophecy is if it comes true or not, aren't you? I guess probably there's a lot of people out there, and you know, as I do too, many people that call themselves prophets. And I just say, for their sake, I'm glad we don't stone the prophets anymore. It takes a while for a prophecy to come forth, and the only proof text is it true? Did it happen or did it not? And that can be a pretty testy thing. Why are there so many people out there that refer to themselves as prophets? I don't get it. That's not exactly a calling I think I would want to tag on myself. There's too much implicit in it.
Well, no, and a lot of the prophets, the true prophets of ancient times, were killed for their prophecies and their faith in God, etc. So, calling yourself a prophet, maybe you feel called to that level, and there's some self-exoneration in that and whatnot, but you're right. I think the prophecies that are important are the ones that were already given that need to be discerned presently. We are told in Revelation 11, though, that there will be 2 witnesses who come, and they will also prophesy. So, but presently the book in the Bible and the prophecies given are what we have to discern the days in which we live.
Let me ask you, we've got about 4 minutes left here, and then it might take us a little longer to do that, but we'll squeeze it in. Is the rapture beyond the horizon, or is the rapture on this side of it? I guess what I'm asking is, where is most of Christendom? Pre-trib, after-trib? What do you think?
Okay, well, that's an important thing, and for the listeners that aren't aware of that, what you're talking about is the ultimate reward of the Christian faith, and that is when Jesus comes, and we're told in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 50, 51, 52, and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18, that Jesus is going to come with the shout, with the sound of a trumpet, shout of an archangel, in the twinkling of an eye, unannounced. It'll shock the world, and He's going to catch up those who already died in Christ, those that are asleep, well, along with us that remain, a generation that is still alive, caught up into the clouds to be with the Lord forever. We're told in John 14 that He is presently building mansions in His Father's house, meaning in heaven, for that occasion. He's got welcome mats for Christians on those mansions right now. He's probably about done constructing them. That's how close we are in the end times. So I believe that with sufficient scriptures that talk about we are not, as the bride of Christ, appointed to the wrath of God, which displays itself, which is poured out in the tribulation period. That 7-year tribulation period, also called Daniel's 70th week, in Daniel 9, verses 24 through 27. There's all kinds of reasons that I put forward in my book, Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon, to understand how come the Lord could come. It's an imminent event. Nothing has to happen. It could happen and tonight. And that's why we're called to redeem the time while we have it. We should be called to evangelism and holiness in these last days. The Apostle Paul taught 2,000 years ago and to the Thessalonians that the rapture was an imminent event, and we are 2,000 years closer to that because it has not happened yet. Mm-hmm. Now, to the unbeliever, this kind of conversation is pie in the sky, it's Star Wars, it's science fiction, it's the Twilight Zone. But to the Christian, it's the ultimate reward for their faith in Jesus.
The Message Bible explains that so beautifully, what you just read. The Elliot, I can't think of his last name, that put together the Message Bible in Thessalonians. He said, now, a burglar's not going to make an appointment to come to your house, nor is the God of the universe going to make an appointment to come and bring His folks out of there. It's just really well described the way he puts it, and I found that so interesting. Anyway, I really appreciate your taking so much time with us today. I want to mention again, Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon. That's the book by Bill Salus, and it is available at all the usual spots, Barnes & Noble and Amazon and your favorite bookstore, more than likely. If they haven't got it, they'll get it for you. But it is available also from your website, and give that to us again if you would, please, sir.
Yes, thanks, Ron. It's been such a good honor to be on your program. The website is prophecydepot.com. That's Depot like Home Depot, D-E-P-O-T, prophecydepot.com. It's an active site. I've got hundreds of articles about end times Bible prophecy. We keep the TV shows you referred to at the earlier hour. They can be seen there on Jewish Voice TV. They're airing internationally all this week. And they can get a plethora of information about Christianity, how to be saved, and about end times Bible prophecy. And Ron, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, it's been my delight, sir, and I'm sure that our audience has enjoyed it and will be looking you up, and I appreciate that. Bill Salus, thanks again. We appreciate you being with us on News and Views on this day.
Fantastic. Thanks.